Goedemiddag, goedemorgen. Welkom bij de webinar waar we het gaan hebben over hoe bestaande e-commerce oplossingen beperkend zijn voor je huidige groei. Ik ben in dit geval Bart Vries van de Nieuwe Zaak. Ik zal het zo meteen even verder introduceren. En ik heb met mij Herbert van BigCommerce. Zal ik zo meteen ook even verder introduceren. Ik zal eerst even... Wij zijn de Nieuwe Zaak. En de Nieuwe Zaak is een agency gespecialiseerd in e-commerce. Dat doen wij over de hele breedte van strategie, creatie, techniek, platformbeheer, marketing en conversieoptimalisatie. En daarbij brengen wij de klanten dus eigenlijk van A tot Z. Mijn rol daarin is als technisch lead dat ik verantwoordelijk ben voor de technische dienstverlening van de Nieuwe Zaak. En vanuit een business perspectief en een IT perspectief proberen deze twee samen te brengen. En dat doen wij voor een heleboel klanten over de B2B en B2C range. Dat zijn een bekende namen als Miss Etam, die natuurlijk iedereen wel kent. Aan de B2C kant, maar ook B2B klanten zoals een Kruidbos in de fietsonderdelen. Wij hebben ook een heleboel partnerships en een van die partners die ik vandaag uitgenodigd heb is BigCommerce. Jim, take it away.
Thanks, Bart. And I was hoping to pick up that you were going to say, but Jim will do this piece in English, because obviously I am going to do it in English, I'm afraid. My Dutch is not so good, although I was surprised at how much I understood, so thank you. So yes, I'm the General Manager of BigCommerce in the EMEA region, so Europe, Middle East and Africa. BigCommerce has been going now for 11 years, founded in 2009 by Eddie and Mitch in Australia. And they saw a need very much for a platform that small merchants as well as big merchants could get onto to start trading online ultimately, because obviously at that point, 2009, there was a lot of people coming online, but there wasn't much in the market for a smaller non-technical audience to be able to work with. So we're now a very big company, 25 billion has been traded through the platform since that time. We're listed on the NASDAQ with the big C ticker. And we have a good management team as we look to expand more across the whole world outside of the United States. So next slide, please. A key thing about BigCommerce is it's software as a service. Okay, so it's a software as a service platform. What that means is we take on the hosting, the security, the compliance, and all the innovation and programming effort that you need to build the actual software platform. So it's as easy as signing up. You can go on and sign up to a trial store today as you're watching the webinar if you want to, and get something live very, very quickly indeed. I personally built a store at the beginning of the COVID crisis for a local brewery in about 2 hours, which allowed them to carry on trading as a great example. We'll come on to the next slide in a second around open SaaS. We also have very large enterprise merchants on the back of that because they can come in there and actually come in and then work on how they want the journey to look and work with agencies like Nieuwe Zaak to create very much more bespoke implementations. And that's been recognized. So we have some really good awards now. So Gartner last year had us down as a kind of customer choice best digital commerce software. And actually this year, Gartner, Forrester and IDC have all put us into challenges and leaders and strong performers up there with some of the more traditional monolithic platforms. And that's because of the kind of flexibility of the open SaaS approach, as well as the level of innovation that we're putting into the platform.
That brings us to today's topic, how your e-commerce solution is limiting growth and how to fix that. Jim, you with BigCommerce, you're on the modern side of the spectrum, let's say. There's a whole lot of retailers that have their own landscape they're working with now that started like 5 or 10 or 15 years ago. That ecosystem developed during the years, and well, today we're going to talk to what changed in the last few years, and that brings what's going on in e-commerce is that one of the key changes I think is the focus on convenience, and the focus on convenience means that we're continuously changing the landscape and changing the interaction with the end user, with the customer, to optimize that process, and that from where it is and what time of the day it will be able to have a positive shopping experience. And that had quite some effect on how many changes you apply on a web shop, for example. Changing in small interactions, but also big changes like implementing points of sales or implementing other sales channels. Another aspect we see as really important is the value of your brand. E-commerce was for quite some time. It was quite a technical system that was able to do order intake. Well, for retail, that's been away for a long time already, but for B2B, it's still there. But also in retail, brand is getting more and more important to make sure you outstand next to your biggest opponents. Brand value needs to have the freedom to be deployed in your interaction layer as well, so that the customer can really recognize your brand within seconds. And in traditional solutions, that's quite difficult. And one of the biggest changes, I think, in the last, let's say, few years, is that there's an enormous wave of innovative tools that help you optimize your customer journey, or to help you optimize the interaction, or to help you optimize your data, that is implemented in the landscape, in the interaction layer with your customer. So that's the web shop itself, or somewhere in the levels below. For example, the backend. Here you see some samples of it, like an artificial intelligence-based search, personalization, loyalty. They all are related to your customer and have a heavy impact on it. And one of the last I'd like to mention here today is that sales channels are being added, and they will be added, and they will be removed as well. In the last few years, it's all started off with web shops, and you had your separate point of sales. It's getting more and more brought back together as one structure that will facilitate multiple channels. So where's social in that? Where are the marketplaces? They also should be following the same route and not have independent routing for that. So you have difficulties on communicating with your customer, for example. Jim, how is that for modern e-commerce where you're from?
Yeah, it's a really good point. So I've got 20 years in e-commerce, Bart, and everything you've been talking about in those previous slides is getting faster and faster. There's more and more new channels coming in, new payment types, and it comes back to that convenience. Customers shop the way they want to shop. So there's one very large brand in e-commerce who are partners of ours at BigCommerce ultimately in the marketplace side. But why do people shop with them? Well, it's because they can go and find the brands they want, and it's very easy and convenient. When their Prime service first appeared, I loved it because I could shop from my bed without having to think about payment types. If you know what I mean, it's very simple. So the issue that anybody stuck on a traditional e-commerce platform has, though, is trying to keep up with that. It costs a lot of money and it's quite difficult. So if you have an on-premise old monolithic platform, I'm not going to read the entire slide, obviously, but it's slow, it's inflexible. We know that, say you wanted to integrate into Facebook and Instagram shops, which are new and out now in the States and coming to Europe hopefully next year, that's going to cost time and money with a systems integrator. So that allows, us at BigCommerce, we take on those integrations. And once we've integrated it once for somebody, it's integrated for everybody. So a great example of that is, for the Instagram and Facebook shops, you can literally put in your Facebook details and they're there. All right. So in the States, you would actually be able to check out on Instagram. And in Europe, you would be taken to the web store, which is there now, right? And that's just an example. And I like to talk in examples because it kind of helps people understand where we're going to of the difference between the monolithic platforms and the more modular modern solutions that run on this sort of SaaS methodology. So next slide, please, Bart, because I think that's what we'll talk about now. So SaaS, I just talked about that integrate once, run anywhere approach. So once we have an app in the App Store, or once we have a different headless front end connected for the web shop. That work's been done, and that's available to everybody else. And that's the same as all SaaS platforms to a certain extent. Ditto, the other side of it is the open source platform, where people might add in that functionality, and you as a retailer can work with an agency to roll that out and introduce it. And at BigCommerce, we talk about open SaaS because we think we're the kind of co-joining of those two approaches. So we'll do all the hosting, like I said, and all the difficult piece around making sure it scales for peak or for the current situation we're in. But we also have that ability for you to, if you want to, take on our checkout, for instance, use our checkout SDK, use our entire set of GraphQL APIs if you want to, and effectively build almost a bespoke solution, but with the knowledge that it's been hosted. And that's what gives you that flexibility and speed to market, and reduction in kind of total cost of ownership that you can get on a modern platform like ours. And one of the ways looking at that is headless, of course, Bart. So do you want to talk to this slide a little bit?
Yeah, it's headless is a really nice hype word we've heard since 1.5 years, I think, about that. And headless is quite a complex term for separating interaction from business logic. And in this slide here, you see on the upper side, you see a traditional platform where you have the UI right next to the e-commerce platform. And on the diagram below, you'll see that there's an API layer in between. And what that actually means is that you create freedom for both sides of the schema. So on the UI side and on the e-commerce side, to continue development without immediately impacting the other party. So that means that your backend can evolve on its own pace, where your UI, which is way more important because you interact with the customer there, can have its own pace as well. So for our customers, we are creating the opportunity to change more quickly than you will be able to do the same change before.
And Bart, can I just talk to that very briefly with another example?
Yeah.
About 10 years ago, I was working with a UK-based retailer that turns over billions a year, one of our largest brands in the UK, but on one of those monolithic platforms. And when we started the project, and it was a long project, it took 3 years because it would do on that sort of platform for that size retailer. When we started the project, the iPad didn't exist. That's how long ago it was. There was no such thing as tablets, right? 3 years later, when we launched, the iPad was 70% of the homepage hits. So we had a whole new device and a whole new kind of structure and class of devices that came along. And because of that monolithic architecture, with 6 months to go, a change request had to be raised so that we could actually work with that and build the front end that would work on that device. But with a headless approach, you'd have a different way of doing it. And it's all about that agility to change, because no one knows what's coming down the technology pipe in terms of how users interact. And so this API-led headless approach is a much better way of coping with that kind of change.
Yeah, you even can connect with systems that don't have any interaction at all.
Absolutely, exactly.
It's all. But what does have interaction, obviously, is a PWA, another nice term you'll hear about since last 2 years, let's say. And it's, in a certain way, it's just a normal website like you used to have now. It's just HTML. It's just no different technology than you already had, but it adds some extra features. It adds some extra features where you have an app-like experience that's optimized for branded usage, high performance from its core, and full screen on your phone. And it also sizes to your desktop, or like you used to do with your responsive website. But you have maximum grip. You can adjust it the way you want, adjust it the way the customer wants it, and it will fit on APIs of a SaaS platform like BigCommerce. Important development that's going on in the last 2 years, and that will continue to evolve in the next few years. It has access to hardware of your device as well. Interesting point that you could use in retail scenarios like your shops, or tag scanning, or location determination, or camera usage, all from the website. And then I made a really simple diagram, and I'll like a technician, I make this kind of diagrams, obviously. And what I like to see here, the best of breed means that the wave of tools we're seeing to get over us the last few years allows us to make our solutions more intelligent. And what it does is that, for example, a search feature in the platform might be like a 7 or an 8, but with a best of breed approach, it'll allow you to make it a 10. And with the combination of open SaaS and using a headless approach, it will allow you to fit in best of breed solutions in a certain layer of your application architecture, and optimizing the user experience with it without breaking away half a system. It's more in the nature of the architecture of an open architecture that will allow you to embrace best of breed solutions.
Absolutely. Oh, sorry, Bart, go on.
Yeah, and there's quite a different investment perspective, Jim.
Yeah, so these are kind of two of my favorite slides when talking about the modern world. And genuinely, from the background of me and having built the stuff in the past, I hated having to charge clients to do kind of boring stuff, right? The maintenance and hosting, the application support, buying the platform in the first place. It left a very small amount of money at the top of the pyramid for doing development and making the site work the way our customers wanted to work with the site. So if you go to the next slide, but I think that's a good illustration of how the modern e-commerce addresses that, in fact. So because the platform, the maintenance and hosting, the application support, the product development of integrations, like I said, to marketplaces and other stuff is constantly happening. And that's what's built into the kind of SaaS license fee, ultimately the monthly fee that you pay there. It leaves a lot more money to create exactly the kind of experiences you as a business want, so you can interact with your customers in the way they want to be interacted with, or spend it on branding, or spend it on AdWords. It's much better at driving actual value as opposed to just allowing you to get on the table stakes of having a web shop ultimately.
Yeah, so embracing the features and the standards of the platform will change the pyramid from upside down.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Great. Adding features in the custom storefront will have added value. So that brings us to a short recap. Why modern things will fix things for you. A modern e-commerce stack embraces growth because separation of systems, like we saw in the presentation, initially add complexity because it's a new world. You have to get used to it, but brings flexibility in return. It will allow you to have a different pace of change in your interaction layer, and that's good for your business. An API-based modular approach enables best-of-breed solutions. It will allow you to implement tools that will influence the user experience, that will influence the data, that will influence the interaction or what the customer sees. And that aside of the really good platform you have as a base.
Exactly.
A headless setup facilitates robust shops, so you won't have to bother about the backend that will make sure it's there for you. It has, but the headless setup also facilitates maximum attention for your customer and your brand. It's just two different worlds. And the last point, open SaaS platforms are scalable out of the box. You don't have the pain of platform upgrades. And with scalable, I also mean You don't have to worry about when you have that campaign in next week. You don't have to bother about making sure the servers will take it. It's a responsibility of the SaaS platform to make sure you'll be online. And Jim, how was that for the last period in a top season for you during COVID?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, you can imagine we've been running at very high levels of traffic and high levels of business coming through the platform, and it's performed faultlessly. I don't think our merchants have noticed any different, and that's exactly the way it's been architected. It should be like that. We have auto scaling capability on the Google Cloud. And so that's a really big deal, actually, compared to where I was in the old days, trying to work out how many processes I needed to buy just to deal with 4 weeks of the year. So yeah. It's a lovely way to work.
I can remember those as well, the calculations. Yeah, well, also when you're really a campaign-driven business, it's interesting that you don't have to always have the maximum capacity available. But it will go with the flow.
Yeah,
and that's
exactly
done by you guys. So why the Nieuwe Zaak and BigCommerce?
So, well, for me, as we've talked about, the platform, we have tenants, right? We have central tenants of why you think you should go with BigCommerce. We're here to enable our merchants to sell more. Ultimately, we're built for growth. We have a very powerful performance, as we've already discussed, and a low total cost of ownership. So it might not be, it may not initially look cheaper, but actually when you take into account our integrated payments, where we've negotiated great rates on behalf of our merchants, the pre-integrated nature of our app store and the PWA that you described earlier, Bart, and the lack of need for doing upgrades, the hosting, the compliance, the PCI compliance. We're all here ultimately to try and help our merchants sell more and thrive as businesses. So that's why BigCommerce.
Cool. And obviously we're making our promise to our customers as well. With our digital commerce experience, we always know what to do next. And together with our customers, we make the right choices and we grow to a next level. And that's also the way that we did discover the direction we want to develop in, and together we ensure a professional implementation, and we're doing that from an agency perspective. And together with BigCommerce, we make your business grow. That's the end of our the webinar we want to share with you. Thank you for your attention, and feel free to get in touch if you have any questions regarding the subject or regarding retail and how it's changing in the next few years or the last few years. And happy to tell more about it. Jim?
Absolutely. Looking forward to talking to people. Feel free to reach out, and let's disrupt and revolutionize e-commerce and web shops across EMEA together.
All right. Thank you for your time, Jim. En voor de kijkers, bedankt voor het kijken. En nogmaals, feel free om to get in touch. And see you next time.